Tegridy Made Games is an indie developer that emerged in 2020. This Randy Marsh-approved company has produced nothing but quality and integrity with every release. And going in, I was fairly confident with the quality. After all, how can you mess up a puzzle game? No. No!
It's not true. That's impossible.
Level after level, I looked for something. Anything different and found nothing. Only 29 seconds of audio in this entire game. Look. It's just one game. One bad game. Let's move on to this next one and see how it goes. What the hell was that? Who is holding these paddles? Superman? But at least it didn't have the same song as the first game. Okay, I'm pulling your leg a little bit here. The third game didn't have the same song as the first game. But what it did have was this really interesting anime feeling song. Hey, that's pretty good, right? Well, the game, on the other hand, it's a snooze fest. What kind of pinball game is this? The sad thing is that this slow burn builds up to, honestly, a chaotic mess that actually has potential to be fun. So what went wrong here? So this represents the entirety of your game. You start here, the fun begins here, and this is the end. All you need to do is move the start down here. Right above the fun. And you got yourself a much better game here. You're so close. You're so close. And this furry killer didn't seem much better either. It was a rather slow-paced and awkward controlling horde mode, at least until I obtained and used the gun. Then it turned into a faster-paced horde mode, where the awkwardness actually added to the challenge. Do you know when you're not doing well as a developer? When you're being outperformed by old Flash games. Endless Furry Killer 2020 has an even slower burn than the last title. At least it handles better, but considering that the character would lose in a race with a snail, that's not saying all that much. What's even worse is that your gun's range is too short. This makes the game take forever, and the upgrade concept does little to make it feel any better. We're not having much luck with these titles, are we? Big surprise! Rob hates every game, so screw you guys, I'm going home. 5 bad games in a row doesn't prove that I hate every game. Besides, the next game is okay. Faster Than Possible is a fairly basic platformer. The primary focus of this game is to finish levels in the least amount of time possible. Items either increase your health, slow down time, or decrease the time that you've spent on the level. While it isn't particularly unique or original, it is the first game to get straight to its strengths. While I might not recommend it over other games in the genre, at least I had a decent time playing it, rather than just buying it for the copious amount of achievements that these games seem to give you. I even like the fact that you can finish the levels in the negatives, though I do wish it would reward you a little more for the time that you spent in-game. See, I don't hate everything. If you want more proof, check out this next game.
Seriously? This is every game. You like some shitty math game? Come on, you guys.
There is a huge lack of educational and math-based games outside of the puzzle genre. While far from perfect, Mental Math Tutor offers a decent mental challenge. And while it isn't Big Brain Academy or Brain Age, having something, anything to keep these aging mental faculties in check is a win. Do you remember that episode of Big Thinkers where I said this? I've been feeling a little slow mentally these past couple days, actually for real. So I decided to go to the basics. I really meant that. And while my troubles might be linked to other causes like poor sleep or poor diet, look, while playing this game might not help with everything, anything to keep the old noggin in shape is a win for me, especially considering how barren the PC market is for this type of game. But now we move on to a game that I think could have potential with a little more tweaking. I didn't edit the audio to this game at all. So let's add some music to make it feel a little less empty. Don't you dare. Escape the speedrun game is honestly a pretty interesting concept. Like Faster Than Possible, your task is to complete the level as quickly as possible. However, the shift to the first-person perspectives and the assets used give it a horror feel. It's like a first-person perspective of trying to escape from Jigsaw. However, the largest flaw, yet again, is the handling. For a game that requires precision platforming, the way the character jumps requires a little tweaking. It just feels a little too heavy and sluggish, so a little speed here would go a long way. The optimization also needs a little adjustment, but that might be even more applicable to the next game. My Little Horror, by far, has the most potential of any of the games I'm going to cover today. While most asset flip horror games just resort to jump scares, My Little Horror goes for a slow burn with a touch of jump scare. For once, this is a positive, as the eerie droning sounds adds to the overall tension, while you have to physically interact with every object you need to progress forward. Having to manually put in each digit in world as opposed to, say, using your keyboard number pad is a huge plus to immersion. But ultimately, I still have some issues with lighting, as it forces you to find your way with a soft timer. Take too much time and you'll find yourself in pitch black. However, what this does do is it keeps the tension high as you move through the game. There's something about the water effects that make your frames chug. I didn't get a good recording of this problem because I dropped the quality of the game before I did record, but you can still see some drop frames here. There are also some issues when shooting through doorways and even near some doors. It seems like the hitboxes are off, and I also encountered some trouble with the game loading the first level. The build-up is something that this game does really well, even if the end it is just zombies. But unfortunately, My Little Horror is the pinnacle that Tegridy Made Games will provide. Endless Furry Killer 3D is one of the more competent games that Tegridy offers. It feels like a modified version of the first-person shooter tutorial that the Unity engine supplies. For all of its simplicity, it's likely the most functional of any of the games that Tegridy offers. Where Endless Furry Killer 3D fails is the fun factor. The lack of enemy variety is a huge problem, especially when compared to other shooters in the same price range. When a shooter where you shoot anime waifus has more variety than your game, you're in trouble. And unfortunately, it gets even worse from here. Usually having your game crash isn't a good thing. Tegridy Games, however, had the genius idea to turn it into a feature. Don't Crash the Zombie Game is an engaging first-person shooter that will crash if you dare to meet your digital maker. I don't think Tegridy Made Games came up with this idea, but I don't think they went far enough. Like, why didn't they program it to, uninstall Windows? That'll learn ya. Get good! Don't Crash the Zombie Game has to be the weirdest wave-based shooter I've ever played. Health, ammo, and guns are plentiful. Sure, your guns are pea shooters, and sometimes zombies just spawn right in front of you, but it's almost like they didn't want you to die. They didn't want to give you the experience of having your game crash. Ultimately, Don't Crash the Zombie Game turns into another snooze fest. So maybe Tegridy Made Games needs something more basic to draw me in. After all, the ping pong game wasn't awful. So maybe they need another legacy title. Endless Furry Asteroids isn't terrible. It plays very similar to the Atari Classic, however, this time it allows you to go backwards. This new direction enhances your maneuverability and can actually provide new challenges. I spent a decent chunk of my honestly brief exposure to this game flying around backwards and shooting objects that I was now running away from rather than flying towards. In a way, it can add a new level of difficulty, and I'd say it's an acceptable, be it annoying, adaptation. At this point, I was wondering if Tegridy Games had broken me. I had been exposed to so much Tegridy that the slightest hint of quality excited me. All I needed now was some dank memes. Yes. Don't Crash the Political Game. This meme-tastic game has you kill sentient heads of various political figures. It even employs the crashing mechanism I've mentioned before. However, this time, the game is actually built to kill you. Death means being launched back to the desktop, from which you can promptly uninstall and apply for a refund.
Wrong again. You just don't understand the intricacies of Tegridy's genius.
Look, all I'm asking for is a game that doesn't think crashing is a feature. Is that too much to ask for? At this rate, I might be better off making my own game. A game with blackjack and hookers. Okay, while it may not have hookers, Endless Furry Blackjack is a fairly low-effort game that allows you to play blackjack. What more could you want? And there's really nothing else to it. Look, if I wanted to play a game just for the blackjack, I think I'd rather play these. At least these have a plot. But after all that, it feels like Tegridy Made Games is missing something off of their resume. Let's see. Previous experience, Senior Development Lead, QA, Asset Requisition, previous genres, first-person shooter, top-down shooters, platformers, memes, and... there it is. Clickers. Endless Furry Clicker is a game in which you... What else can you say about a clicker? Especially since there isn't anything other than this particular screen to look at and click on. Well, maybe Tegridy Games is just a solo dev that hasn't found a sweet spot.
Yeah, it's easy to flip a game, idea-wise. It's not easy to flip it execution-wise.
Wow, that didn't age well. But maybe I'm a little bit biased, So let's take a closer look at this actual dev's video.
Quick little bitty here. What's more important, the idea or the execution of the game?
The execution, obviously. A great example of this is Boomerang Fu, which is a silly game about various food items going around and maiming each other with boomerangs. Now, it wasn't this premise that sold the game. What sold it was the insanely fun gameplay. Otherwise, people might have returned it, just like I would have returned your games if I didn't insist on archiving terrible games.
Is the idea of the game mind-boggling? Or is the game mind-boggling? If the game's mind-boggling, you're going to be making GTA 6.
Look, you're conflating scale with execution. An excellent example of this is No Man's Sky, which had an excellent idea, but they failed to execute, and that's what got people upset. If they had only promised what they were capable of delivering, then the whole thing would have been a completely different story.
Look at Endless Furry Killer 2020. Perfect example of what idea beats execution, because the execution was actually pre-planned.
I would hardly call your execution perfect unless you were already promising a shit game. Look, my criticism might seem a little harsh, but you actually go on to contradict yourself later in the video and in your own comments.
The point being, the execution generally is going to be way more important than your actual whatever the hell you've been working on the past 3 or 4 years.
So after everything, what do I think of Tegridy Made Games? Honestly, I think they're just another asset flipper that's out to make a quick buck. And despite my harsh comments about this developer, don't take that as justification to go out and harass anyone. Always remember to vote with your wallet. As of right now, I'll continue my endless search for quality video games. Speaking of which, you can check out my video right now about Assassin's Creed. And until the next episode, I'll see you there. Bye.